Hello and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen. Today we're going to talk about Matt and Katie. Matt and Katie are students of Velocity Banking, and we've decided that we're going to call everybody students from now on because you guys, we don't consider you clients. We consider you guys all students of Velocity Banking just like we were. So we've decided that that's the title that we're going to give you now. So how are you today? I'm doing awesome. Today's my birthday, January 18th, so it's a good day. I want to say hi and thank you, Mom. You've done so much for me over the years. Barbara Ellen, she's amazing. So everybody out there, remember your moms on your birthday. They're fantastic people. So today, let's talk about Matt and Katie and what Matt and Katie have gotten themselves into and how they feel. But first, let's go into Velocity Banking and a plan. So having a plan can get you out of the debts that you are in. So providing you with hope through a plan, that is what we are trying to do with our channel with Pay Down Debt Solutions. We want to give you guys hope because there is hope. All of you that know me know that Dan and I have spent many years trying to figure this banking thing out. And as a ex-branch manager and as an ex-banker, I can tell you that banks don't do velocity banking. They don't understand velocity banking. At least the bankers don't. So it's not their fault that nobody's taught you this. You know, they don't know either. They have been traditionally banking their entire life, just like you have, just like I was until finding velocity banking. But the hope is there is another way, and that other way can make your life so much better when you choose to take advantage of learning about velocity banking, which is why we call you guys students. So Dan brought up a really good point the other day. You know, he talked about Regina's situation, and a lot of you don't want to use your savings that you have, and I get it because Dan and I didn't want to use our savings either, right? So we had actually contacted a bankruptcy attorney to try to figure out if there was a way that we could hold on to our cash assets and get ourselves out of debt and maybe file for bankruptcy or do something to restructure. And so we had consulted a bankruptcy attorney about that, but it turns out that that wasn't really going to work out for us. And then I found, right, enter in velocity banking, because I found velocity banking and I learned a new way to bank. And it made sense to me like that, guys, only because I understand the financial institutions and I understand these products. So for me, it didn't take me very long to figure it out. And it's funny because when I brought it to Dan, I remember him looking at me and he's like, this is a shell game. He goes, all you're doing is rearranging money, right? So here he is, right? This super smart math guy, because Dan has, one of his majors is math, right? So he's a math major. But I'll tell you what, it's different when you're talking about accounting. So accounting is very different than mathematics. Okay, so the math is different. And so it's a harder concept sometimes for people to wrap their head around. And so you can be great at math and you can be terrible at math. And actually, this can all make sense to you if you learn through to pick through it and understand it. So when we found velocity banking, we changed our trajectory, and I want to change your trajectory because I know how incredible velocity banking is. All right. But you need a plan. You can't just enter your finances without a plan of some sort. So having a plan and knowing how you're going to get from point A to point B is incredibly important. Okay. So if you're flying through life, right, go by the seat of your pants and you're trying to figure things out, while that works for a lot of people, and it works for me in writing, believe it or not, because I have that kind of brain, but it really doesn't work for you in finances. So you do need a plan, because if you don't know where you are or where you're going, or maybe you know where you are and you know where you want to go, right, but you just don't know how to get there, then that's the problem. The how to get there is what we're going to solve for you. So let's take a look at this, right? So this system, right, providing you with hope through a plan, all right? So velocity banking is, and the pay down way provides you with a plan. And without a plan, without a strategy, remember our 3-step strategy, 3 steps. And I know everybody out there says everything is 3 steps. Well, 1, because it's short, right? And 2, we're saying 3 steps because it truly is only 3 steps. Number 1 is to organize all your finances, right? You're going to organize every debt that you have. You're going to organize all of the income that you have. You're going to organize every bit of savings that you have, or 401k, or whatever you have. You're going to organize those debits and credits, and you're going to put them together on a sheet. And you're going to then decide, number 2, which is you're going to identify, right? You're going to, number 1, identify your debt destroyer. And number 2, you're going to identify the plan that you're going to be, involved in. So with these guys here, they were maxed out all over the place, right? So they were maxed in just about every area of their life at this point. And so they needed a little bit of help. And before it got any worse, they were going to take a look at things. And so we're going to talk about that here. But so So for them, one of the strategies could have been the max card strategy, right? So that might have been a way out for them. And in a lot of times, though, the max card strategy will be involving credit cards to begin with. And then the evolution of that is into a personal line of credit or HELOC if that's available to you. And it also depends on where your credit is when you're starting that strategy, okay? So you have to have a strategy, and that is part of it. And so that is our number 2 step, which is going to be identifying your debt weapon and your strategy. And then you come into the 3rd step, right? Once you identify that debt destroyer and you identify what strategy you're going to use, then it's time to implement it, okay? And so part of implementing is going ahead and setting that all up for you. Once you've identified that plan, now you got to set it up, right? So if you don't have things in place to do it, like maybe you're going to use a 0% credit card for some of it. Maybe you're going to use a personal line of credit, or you want to apply for a personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit. And in this case here, they had to then apply for something and see if they were, approved, okay? So it involves a couple things, but once you get that setup done, you are ready to implement your strategy, and it's all about hammering it down through that income, through paycheck parking, which is another key element to what we do. So as I always say, and as Dan says on every one of his videos, I laugh because he is so consistent. It is, right? What do we always say? Always align, never alone. And that holds true. Always align and never, ever alone. Okay. So once you do this, right, and once you figure out, what strategy you're going to use, what plan you're going to use, then we're going to put you in the driver's seat, right? Because you are in the driver's seat with Velocity Banking. You no longer feel out of control, okay? Right now, there's many of you sitting out there on the other side of this camera, and you feel way out of control. You don't know what's going on with your finances. You don't even want to look at them. You don't want to look at them. You don't want to organize them because it's terrifying to you, because you think that at the end of the day, if you take a look at that, once you put it on paper, it becomes real, right? I mean, honestly, I was in the same boat. I did the exact same thing. I put my blinders on. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know how bad it was. And I figured I'm just going to trudge forward, because if I didn't go ahead and look at those numbers, it was not real. And I didn't have to worry about it, right? Well, that's wrong. It's totally wrong. And it was a terrible way to look at things. And, poor Dan had to deal with that and deal with the finances and try to get me on board to figure out what was going on. But it didn't take long, guys, because, once I found Velocity Banking, it changed everything. And you know what? Here's what you're going to find. I almost guarantee it. Most of the time, not in every case, but most of the time, when you go and organize your finances, you're going to realize, hey, it's not as bad as I thought it was. And it's going to be okay. You will be okay. And you're going to be okay because now you found something that works, right? We have solutions here. Velocity Banking is a solution. There are many people out there talking about debt and how to get yourself out of debt, and they're blaming you for this and blaming you for that and telling you got to change your life, you got to change your habits, you got to change your behaviors. And that's okay. You can do some of that if you want to. But we're telling you with Velocity Banking, you don't necessarily have to, okay? Now, should you? Maybe in some cases you should, but you don't have to, okay? So, and again, we're calling you guys students now because I don't want to look at you as a client. That is not what you guys mean to me. You mean a heck of a lot more, because I have gotten so much joy in hearing you guys come out and say that the solutions that we have provided have made you able to sleep at night. And oh my God, you guys, that brings tears to my eyes, no joke, because I've been there. I know what it's like, and I get it. So that is why we're all students, right? Okay. So Velocity Banking is going to get you to that financial freedom much faster than you ever thought you could, right? And we're going to show you that here today. Another couple students of ours, Matt and Katie. And so here's the thing. You don't have to be frugal, right? And I was just saying, you don't have to be frugal. Maybe it makes sense for you to do that. And if you are a little bit frugal, guess what? You're just going to hammer things down faster. But you don't have to be, because we only have one life. So we're going to live it, right? And Dan, he's funny because he talked to you guys about his beater, right? We have a few vehicles, and by a few I mean a lot, probably more than we should. But again, some of those were from other businesses that we've had and are for other businesses that we have. But so one of Dan's favorite cars is when he was working for the car companies as an engineer, he got a Dodge Ram. It's a 2008, and it's candy apple red. It's beautiful, or it was one at one point. Beautiful truck, right? And so we got it's a lifetime powertrain on this sucker. So Dan is never getting rid of it, right? Never. So, and he jokes and he says the kids won't ride in it anymore. he's kind of that's kind of true. Like they're like, oh, do we really have to take the Ram? And so, they get upset about it because, the heat's not great in it and the air conditioning is like non-existent. But you know what? It runs and it's actually a lot of fun to drive. So Dan uses that for all of his hunting stuff, but he doesn't need another truck. He doesn't care what he drives, right? Some of you do, and that's fine. If cars are your thing, man, that's great. Do what you want to do. And if you can go frugal, but you don't have to, and we're not telling you that you have to, okay? And that's what's beautiful, again, about Velocity Banking. You don't have to be frugal if you don't want to be, but don't be ridiculous either, right? Because that's just going to get you in trouble. Okay, so the great thing is about Velocity Banking, again, you don't have to be frugal, but you need to have foresight, right? You don't have to be frugal, but you need foresight. So you need to know what is coming, when it's coming, and where you want to be X amount of years from now, right? So that's part of your plan. That is part of us giving you a plan. And you should know where you are going and where you want, where you need to know where you want to go with this, because people without a plan are just floundering, right? So you have to have goals and aspirations and a plan. So this will help you organize your life. If that is the one place that you are completely disorganized is your finances, this makes it really simple, okay? Super simple. So again, enjoy your life. No beans and rice, as Mr. Ramsey would say. No ramen noodles, unless you like them, then go ahead and eat them all day long. I was sick of them from college. Won't eat those anymore. You just need to be reasonable and you need to be rational when it comes to your finances. So you don't have to be frugal, just be reasonable and be rational. And frugality then doesn't necessarily have to enter into the picture unless you want it to. YOLO, right? YOLO. We only have one life and I want you guys to live it. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to enjoy your family, your kids, your mom and dad, whomever it is in your life that, makes you get up and go to work every day. Enjoy those people because they matter. They matter. Okay, so here is our student scenario, right? So this is Matt and Katie, and they came to us after watching a few of our videos. They hadn't watched a ton of them, so they weren't really sure how to do this, but they were excited and they said, "Okay, you've given us some hope here, and we know there's a way. We just don't know what to do or how to do it. Can you please help us?" So of course, absolutely, we will help. And so we just sat down with Matt and Katie, and we took a look at their finances. Okay, and so they have an income of $7,360. So $7,360 is their income, okay? And their total expenses at this point are $6,920. So their cash flow is $440. Now, they have kids in some expensive sports, one of them being riding, okay? So I know all about that and I know how expensive that can be. They don't ride the same type of horses we do or the same seat. They don't ride the same seat. However, they ride and I know that they're expensive. So they keep finding themselves with extra bills, right? One vet bill can tear that down in a second, trust me, okay? They're big animals. So, so this can go away pretty quickly. And so they want options and they were looking at going in and refinancing. And luckily they watched the right video that we did because they were just about ready to sign the mortgage papers to refinance their house. And then they called us because they thought, you know what, let's just wait on this. And so I'm glad that they did because we were able to find a situation for them that made a heck of a lot more sense because you guys, they're 7 years into this mortgage. If they were to refinance, you know what's going to happen. They're going to reset all of that time. They're going to reset all of that interest and it's going to be more, right? Because they're going to take a cash out to pay down those debts. And then they're going to pay like probably 50,000 plus more than they would have wanted to. And it's way over 50,000, but regardless, they're going to end up paying more, right? The 7 years are gone, done, water under the bridge. We can't do anything about that at this point, but we can going forward once we take care of these debts. And we did talk about that as well. So again, I digress, right? Cash flow, 440. Now, their mortgage is sitting at 215, okay? It did appraise for 315,000, okay? So just make note of that. So their mortgage is right about 215. So it's right about that there. And I said they were 7 years in, okay? And so their current interest rate is 6.375, and you don't even want to know what the new rate was. It was upwards of 7, okay? So their new rate really sucked. And so, again, you double that and you add a 0, and that is their effective interest rate, what they're really going to be paying. So, we don't want them to refinance. If they, again, we give you the choices, right? You make the changes, but at the end of the day, they didn't do it because this made more sense. All right. So they have two car loans here. Okay. So car loan one is $26,481. It's at 5%. $499 is the payment. It's 6 years, and $49.45 will be the total amount they pay back. And then they have car number two, $19,721, 6.2% interest, $350 is their payment. That is also in 6 years. Now, they are 2 years into these car loans. We are actually not going to touch these car loans. We're going to work with the other debt, okay? So, but I wanted to list them there so you kind of know what they have going on, all right? So we know that their total debt, okay, so all of these plus the car loans and everything is $106,111, all right? But the debts that we're going to be working with are these here. They have a personal loan out there, and that personal loan is for $32,650. And they did some home improvements with that. Why they didn't do a home equity loan, I'm not really sure. I guess I never really asked them that. maybe I should have. But anyway, so they did a personal, maybe they didn't have the equity at the time. Maybe that's what it was. Anyway, so they have a personal loan, and it was for $32,650. The payment on that is $578. They're at 8.325% interest. It's for 6 years. Okay, so that was a 6 year loan. So they're at the total payback on that is $8,941. Okay, so personal line of credit they also have, and that is for $12,620, and it is for $263 at a 13% interest rate, and it's 6 years. $5,289 is the amount of interest they would pay at the end of that. And so actually, you know what? That is a personal, no, that is a home equity line, or that is a home equity loan. I'm sorry. This is a home equity loan, and they have two personal loans. That's right, because that wouldn't make sense if they had all those going on. So sorry, that is a home equity loan there. Sorry, guys. Okay. So anyway, so we are at 5289. Okay, so 8941, 5289 for the personal loan, the first line of credit. The second line of credit is at 8499. It's for 180, okay, at an interest rate of 13.375%. It is a 5-year loan. 5 years and 8 months is what it would be to let this run out. The interest on that's going to be $36.42. Okay, so that's how much the interest on that is going to be. Now, then they have Capital One here for $36.50, so $3,650. The payment on that, they're only paying $97 a month. It's at 19.99% interest. If they were to let that run to term, okay, that's 5 years, and that's at $2,125 is the interest they would pay. Then they have Discover. So there's Discover out there. All right. So the Discover card is for $2,490. They have their payment is $71 a month, and it's at 22% interest. Again, it's a 5-year loan, and this one is for $2,125. So the total debts here, okay, and just these here are for almost $60,000. So $59,909. All right. The payments that these come to are $1,189, but remember, we have to add in our payments over here as well. So I've added those in, and so that means that $2,038 is the total amount of their payments, all right? And so if they were to let all of this run to term, again, it is going to cost them $22,000 in interest, so $22,122 in interest. All right, so we took a look at this with them. We sat down and we said, okay, well, what can we do aside from refinancing that mortgage and pushing out your term longer, and also then ending up spending way more in interest, right? So what can we do? Well, we know that their home appraised for $315,000, which gave them the ability to get a home equity line of credit for $37,000, okay? That is at an interest rate of 11.325%. And so here's what we proposed for them, okay? And so I'm just giving you guys the one proposal here because, again, we're pulling in lots of things along the way. And so anyway, so we decided to go with the home equity line of credit. That's what they chose. And so here is what we did. So we paid off initially. So these are our first numbers here. We're paying off the personal loan and the Capital One. Okay, so the 32 plus the 3650. And that brings us to 36,300, okay, which is really close to that home equity line of credit. And typically I don't like to do that, But again, we are paying some things off here. We're giving ourselves a little bit of wiggle room with this Capital One card. And I also know that they're going to hammer this down pretty quickly. So we're okay with this. They were okay with that, so we chose to do it. Now, remember, this is where paycheck parking comes in. So I've talked about paycheck parking in the past. I'm going to talk about it again. So what is paycheck parking? Well, remember, when you get a direct deposit or a check from work, right, it goes into your checking account. It stops there. And then what happens is when you have a home equity line of credit, you actually, that money that goes into your checking account, you then make a payment of the entire amount onto that home equity line, all right? So the entire payment goes on to it. So what does that do? That drops your balance immediately. And that's what it does here. It drops them to $28,940. When it drops that payment, we know that home equity lines of credit and all other revolving lines of credit, such as credit cards, they're all calculated as simple interest, and that is on an average daily balance. So what happens is you have your high balance and you have a low balance here. So they're taking an average then of that on that statement period, an average of these two, and they're coming up with your interest, okay? So what you do then to calculate your interest is you're going to take your high, you're going to take your low, you're going to add them together. You then divide by 2, and then that will give you your average, which you are then going to multiply by 0.11325, okay? And that will give you 1 year's worth of interest at that rate, at that average. But we only want 1 month, right? Because we know we're going to continuously do this and we're going to continuously drop our our balance. So what that means is our first month here, our interest is going to be $307 because once we get that 1 year's worth, we divide it by 12 to get the 1 month. This is the 1 month amount. So we have 1 month of interest, but we also have to add in our expenses, okay? So part of what makes Velocity Banking work is that we're putting all of our income in, we are running all of our expenses through that same tool, right? Through that same debt destroyer. We're running all of our expenses through it. So that means the cash flow that we release from paying this payment off and this payment off, so 578 comes back to us. So this is no longer in our calculations for our expenses, nor is the 97. So those two come back to us, okay? Which leaves us with a balance of 6245 instead of our initial cash flow or initial expenses of 6920. So now we just work this down, okay? So we're going to work this down until the point in which we can pull in our next set of debt, okay? So we have our expenses come out or come back on the line. We have our interest come back on the line, and then it brings us back up to $35,492, okay? Then our income hits again at $73.60, okay? So now how this looks in your checking account. What happens is, again, your direct deposit goes into the checking. Then it moves, you make a payment to that line of credit for the entire amount. If your line of credit is connected to your checking account, it will then act as overdraft protection for you. And you do this only if it's fee-free, okay? And so as you charge using your debit card, it's pulling from that line of credit to pay for those things you're paying for, okay? So all these expenses then get paid through that checking account, but it's pulling back out of that line, okay? So that is the revolving piece, okay? That's the revolving. So you do that if your bank allows you to do that, where it can connect to your checking account, works as overdraft protection, and pulls from that line. You don't do it if they're going to charge you or they don't work it that way. Then you're going to manually transfer the money into your checking account to pay your bills or whatever is coming due. And then you just move the money at those points in time so that you're keeping the average daily balance as it should be, okay? So you only pull it over as needed. It's not that big a deal manually transferring money this way. I've done it for years. And so it really isn't that labor intensive. It's just, an extra thing you have to do a couple times a month. No big deal. All right. So we then run this scenario down. Okay. So here I am running this down until we get to about 33,854. And then I want to stop because I want to go into the next one for you. So this is going to run this way for 16 months. Okay. And then after 16 months, because we know that at 16 months, we know where the balances are going to be using our new platform. So we know where these balances are going to be. And then we know that we can pull in this personal line of credit here, the $12,620. But it is at a different amount at that time, right? Because you have run this for 16 months and that has lowered in that 16-month period. So it actually starts at $10,277. So that is where it starts, okay? So now we're taking our 16-month balance, so the start of the balance after 16 months, and we're taking the balance after 16 months from the personal line of credit, which is $10,277, and we come up with $33,627. That is where we're at. And then we start all over again, right? We start all over again with the income in and expenses out. So our income comes in, drops us to 26,267. Again, we add the high, we add the low, we divide by 2, we multiply by 0.11325, and that becomes our, and divide by 12, sorry, and that becomes our interest, okay? So the 282 is our new interest that we have to add back in, plus our expenses. Now, our expenses are lower too, and why is that? Because we can now, this payment has come back to us as cash flow. So you can see we now have 5, 7, 8, about $900 more in cash flow that is working inside of our debt weapon, right? Our debt destroyer, which is that line of credit. It's working inside, helping to hammer these balances down and drop your interest. So it's all helping you pay down this faster. All right. So now we're at 26,267 income. I'm sorry, all of your expenses come back out, your interest comes back out. So now we're at 32,531. Again, our income comes back in at 7360, drops us to 25,171. Again, our expenses plus our interest come out. And as you can see, the interest is dropping. Look at that. It's dropped by $10, in 1 month's worth of time. That's significant as you go through, right? That adds up. So here we are, we're at 31,425, and this is going to run then for 22 more months, all right? So in 22 months, we then add the 22 months and we add our 16 months together, right? So the interest we paid at the 16-month period of time was the 3216. 22 months of running this, it's at 3659, which means we have paid $6,875 to handle these 3 debts, okay? So you say to me, well, Jen, that's great. We still have 2 more debts that have to be paid. And you're right, we do, right? We have 2 more debts to pay. So right now we've paid $6,875 in interest paid, okay? Over here, right, we've paid $22,122. I'm liking this so far, right? I'm liking this. So then what we have to do is we have to then take and we have to add the personal line of credit to, and then the Discover card, okay? So we take those, and we know it took 38 months to pay all of this off, right? So 38 months to pay the P loan, which is actually a home equity loan, sorry. The personal line of credit and Capital One, it took 38 months to pay that off. Now, if we find at that point in time, right, at 38 months, we know that these are both going to be lower as well, right? So these are both going to be lower. And so what we then have is a total of $5731. That is the debts amount, what you added together after 38 months. That's what we're left with, okay? And so that is 1 month. Now, if we throw that on our line of credit after paying this off, we pay that off in 1 month, right? Because our income is $7,300, right? $7,360. So that, poof, gone. And all you're working then out of that home equity line of credit is just the expenses. That's it. It's over, right? So how much did we pay, though, in the interest from these 2, okay? So we paid, let's see, what did we pay? $4,206. So $4,206 in all of that time frame, we paid $4,206 for those. So that means, okay, that we took care of these debts in 38, okay, we'll say 39 months, right? Because we had to add 1 more month for the 5731. So in 39 months, we then took care of all of this debt, right? All of this debt, the $22,122 that we would have paid in interest. Instead, we paid $11,081. You halved it. Think about that. So you cut that in half, and you didn't even spend 5 years doing it, right? You spent less than 5 years, actually 3 years and a month or 2 to take care of this debt. So this is the power of Velocity Banking. This is why we bring this to you. This is more exciting to me than just about anything else in the world. I know that must mean I'm really lame, right? That's okay. I own that. So you guys learn this, become students of Velocity Banking, continue to come and check out our channel. You know, we are bringing these scenarios to you daily. People keep contacting us, and we're trying to help out as many people as we can. And this is a passion of ours. So that platform that Dan built, amazing. The calculations make this so much faster even for us. So I can't wait to roll that out. But anyway, you guys continue to learn, do this, and save yourself, become debt-free. And I know you'll do it in half the time, if not faster. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you soon.